Classical music has long been regarded as the foundation of Western musical tradition, its complex compositions and emotional depth shaping centuries of musical development. However, its influence is far from confined to concert halls or academic settings. Classical music's reach extends into modern genres like rock, pop, jazz, electronic music, and even hip-hop, where its structural innovations, thematic complexity, and sonic textures continue to inspire artists. The interplay between classical music and modern genres reveals how this rich tradition has been reinterpreted, sampled, and evolved to create new, boundary-pushing sounds. At its core, classical music is built on intricate forms, harmonic structures, and dramatic shifts in tone, all of which have informed the compositions of modern music. The sonata form, for example, used extensively in the works of composers like Beethoven and Mozart, has influenced the architecture of modern rock and pop songs. Many pop and rock songs follow a similar exposition-development-recapitulation structure, starting with a familiar theme, building tension, and then resolving that tension in a satisfying conclusion. This form creates a sense of narrative that keeps listeners engaged, much like a symphony's journey through its movements. One of the clearest examples of classical influence in modern music is the use of orchestral elements in rock and pop. Bands like the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, and Queen integrated symphonic instruments and arrangements into their songs. The Beatles' Eleanor Rigby famously features a string quartet, creating a haunting backdrop that adds emotional depth to the lyrics. Similarly, Led Zeppelin's Kashmir uses a sweeping string arrangement to give the song an epic, cinematic feel. Freddie Mercury of Queen, classically trained in piano, often incorporated operatic and orchestral techniques into Queen's music, most notably in Bohemian Rhapsody, which is a multi-part genre-blending composition with clear classical influences. Beyond specific instrumentation, the thematic richness of classical music has inspired many modern artists to explore complex emotions and ideas in their work. Classical composers such as Bach, Beethoven, and Mahler often tackled grand themes of love, loss, death, and transcendence, layering their music with emotional complexity. This type of thematic depth can be seen in modern artists like Radiohead, whose album OK Computer is often compared to a modern symphony, weaving intricate musical ideas with philosophical reflections on alienation and modern life. The emotional resonance of classical music, combined with its compositional rigor, has inspired countless artists to push the boundaries of their respective genres. Classical music's influence is also evident in the development of film scores and the broader genre of cinematic music. John Williams, one of the most famous film composers, drew heavily from classical traditions when composing iconic scores for Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Harry Potter, and many other films. Williams was particularly inspired by the late Romantic era, taking cues from composers like Richard Wagner and Gustav Holst. Wagner's concept of the leitmotif, a recurring musical theme associated with a particular character, place, or idea, is central to Williams' work in film scoring, and this technique has been adopted by countless other composers in modern cinema and video games. In jazz, classical music's influence can be seen in the complexity of harmony, melody, and rhythm. Musicians like Duke Ellington, George Gershwin, and John Coltrane all drew from classical techniques to elevate jazz into a more expansive, improvisational form. Gershwin, in particular, bridged the gap between classical and jazz with pieces like Rhapsody in Blue, which blends the compositional formality of classical music with the free-flowing energy of jazz. In the mid-20th century, many jazz musicians began incorporating classical elements into their compositions, leading to the development of third stream music, a hybrid of jazz and classical that sought to create a new, expansive musical language. Electronic music, too, has a deep connection with classical traditions. Composers like Philip Glass, Steve Reich, and Terry Riley, who are often associated with minimalism, have influenced a wide range of electronic musicians. The repetitive patterns, slow harmonic changes, and focus on texture found in minimalism can be heard in ambient, techno, and trance music. Contemporary electronic artists like Aphex Twin and Brian Eno have cited classical minimalist composers as key influences in their work. The use of synthetic textures and electronic manipulation in classical compositions, such as those by Karlheinz Stockhausen, paved the way for the modern electronic genre, where the line between acoustic and electronic sound often blurs. Even hip-hop, a genre seemingly far removed from classical music, has not escaped its influence. Many producers and rappers have sampled classical compositions, adding a level of grandeur and sophistication to their beats. Nas's Illmatic, often hailed as one of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time, samples Beethoven's Für Elise in the track I Can, blending hip-hop's rhythmic beats with classical melodies to create a unique sound. Similarly, Jay-Z's Blueprint 2 uses samples from classical pieces, proving that even the world of rap is not beyond the reach of classical music's timeless appeal. Moreover, classical music's rigorous training and technique have laid the groundwork for virtuosity across genres. Many modern musicians in rock, jazz, and even metal have been classically trained, which has influenced their approach to songwriting and performance. For example, the progressive rock genre, exemplified by bands like Yes and Rush, often features long, intricate compositions that echo the complexity of a classical symphony. Metal bands like Metallica have even collaborated with symphony orchestras, performing classical-inspired versions of their songs, further highlighting the genre's ties to classical music. In conclusion, classical music's influence on modern genres is both profound and far-reaching. From the structural underpinnings of pop and rock songs to the complex emotional and thematic depth found in modern music, classical traditions have shaped the evolution of music as we know it. The use of orchestration, the adoption of classical forms, and the thematic ambitions of classical music have given modern genres the tools to innovate and express the complexities of the human experience. As new genres continue to emerge and evolve, it is clear that the timeless influence of classical music will remain an integral part of the musical landscape for generations to come.